I literally made it like almost exactly halfway through. When are we getting to the aliens? That's what I want to know. She was annoying. You can't pitch it like a gender swapped Fight Club and then not give me any Fight Club. Don't do that to me. Ooh, this floor is cold. If you guys are ever wondering what that is right there, it's a little pet teepee that you can buy for your doggy or your kitty. What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another wrap-up video. This is for the month of May, which was a really interesting reading month. I had my first DNF of the year. I had 1 5-star, which is always good. I read 3 audiobooks, 5 physical books, and well, one of them was a DNF, so I guess I read 4 physical books. It was kind of a mid-month, not gonna lie. I definitely averaged more like 3 stars this month, I think, So here is the physical stack. These are the 5 that I read. 1 that was a DNF, which we will get into. It's so annoying too, because I read half of it and then was like, I can't do this anymore. So I've got my handy dandy reading journal. Let me know what your favorite read of May was. Did you have a 5-star? Let me know what it was. All right, let's get into this thing. So first book of the month was actually the 3rd and final installment in the Oxygen Thief series. They're by Anonymous. That was the original thing that kind of interested me about them when I started reading them maybe sometime last year. I don't remember when it was that I picked up the first one. But anyway, Eunuchs and Nymphomaniacs is the 3rd and final installment of that little trilogy. I ended up giving this 3 stars. They honestly kind of feel like a repeat of each other. The whole premise is that we're following our main character. I'm pretty sure he's nameless, and he is essentially just trying to connect with people, particularly women. He's trying to connect physically, he's trying to connect emotionally. He gets hung up on like a breakup that he had in the very first book, and we're still talking about that girl in the 3rd book. That's kind of like a wound that never seems to heal. He has this like on again, off again relationship with her. But it's pretty much just you watching him experiencing a carousel of relationships while trying to promote and sell these books. So it's kind of like a art imitates life situation. There's not a lot of plot in the sense that things are happening. That is not why you would read these books. This is more for those people who really love internal dialogue. You love hearing every single thought pretty much that the narrator has. And you like unlikable characters, because he is certainly not a super likable guy. The way that he views women is very much objectifying them. He is pretty much just absolutely despicable. There's a lot of misogyny. It's kind of one of those books where you're probably like, okay, why did you read all 3 of them if it's like that? It's one of those books that's like a train wreck where you're like, oh, it's so bad and it's probably gonna get worse, so you can't stop reading. So they're weirdly entertaining in that sense. A quote that will really give you a good idea of who our main character is: "Women, it seemed, had what I sought. They carried it around with them. I had thought it was their, you know what, but now I could see it was much more serious than that. It wasn't sex I had been chasing all those years. It was approval." So every now and then you get like these really insightful thoughts and realizations that he has that kind of keep you reading, because you're like, oh, especially as, a woman, you're like, oh, he's gonna change. Oh, he's like learning, and it does seem genuinely like he is trying to learn to be like a better person, but then he just like relapses back into being. Basically, the books just do a really good job of showing the fallibility of humans, and there's something that is just universal about that. Some of the themes in here are definitely like abuse, like substance abuse particularly. Him being in AA does give you the sense that like, oh, maybe he's trying to like better himself. So again, you kind of like keep reading because you assume like he is going to reach a point where he changes, like you're waiting for that static character change. I did speed read through the last half of this one because I knew it was the last book. I kind of got the sense, from the entire first half, I was like, oh, okay, this is still kind of like the same thing that we've been reading in the previous 2, so I just sped read to finish it. They're written well enough, but yeah, just go into it knowing that women are going to be objectified, and our main character is trying to change himself, but we don't necessarily get like a solid ending, if that makes any sense. So 3 stars, they're fine. All right, next were 2 audiobooks. I will mention them together because they're very similar. They're both by Dave Ramsey. Basically, I'm always trying to learn more about finances, particularly personal finance. The books are Total Money Makeover and Baby Steps Millionaires. Dave Ramsey, I'm sure that you probably recognize him from the cover. He's like one of the big wigs in the finance world. He is super against any kind of debt. His big thing is to help you get out of it. That's what his baby steps are for. So he did go bankrupt at one point in time and then had to kind of build everything back up again. But he is currently a multi-millionaire, and he basically gives you in these books exact step-by-step directions for what to do with numbers and examples of people who have followed those steps and like called into his radio show and kind of told him their story. Anyway, his big thing is make sure that you're investing. You should have like a specific savings amount. He talks about the emergency fund, your starter emergency fund, which starts at like $1,000 and then eventually will grow to be 3 to 6 months of living expenses. You're learning about the debt snowball, which is, I want to say, like a term that he coined, where he talks about paying off your smallest amount of debt first, and then kind of putting on more and more payments. I was actually kind of doing this before I even really found him, like before I read these books. So now at 30, I'm debt free, which is very exciting. That was my goal, actually. I wanted to get out of my student loan debt by the time I was 30, when I turned 30 in December 2023. And yeah, I did that. He doesn't get preachy with it. He's just literally telling you, like, statistically, this is what you need to do in order to be able to get out of debt and live in a way that is more free, like a way that you want. So if you are like me and finances really intimidate you and you were never taught this kind of stuff in school, it is super, super beneficial. The earlier you can get into it and start to kind of understand a little bit, even if it's just a little bit about like investing and that kind of thing, the better off you will be in the future. So if you're in your 20s and your 30s or even your 40s or 50s and you're watching this, highly recommend Dave Ramsey. Okay, next up was one for my Reading Around the World challenge. This is for Sudan, and this is Season of Migration to the North by Tayeb Salih. I hope I'm saying his name right. This is a story within a story. Pretty short, little guy. Probably, what was this, like 200 pages? Not even 150 pages. And it is essentially about our main character. He's been away at university for I think 5 years abroad. And he comes back to his village, which is situated on the Nile River in Sudan. And there's a new guy in the village, a stranger, who's been there for years and has kind of enmeshed himself into the local community. But he doesn't really know anything about him, and that's sort of the one kind of strange, weird new thing, the strange new change that's happened when he returns home. This new stranger is named Mustafa Saeed, pretty sure that's how you say his name, and he essentially tells our narrator his life story. And his time spent abroad. In London, he was working as an economist, and so we're essentially not so much focused on our actual main character, our narrator, but we're focused on this older gentleman's life story as he recounts everything that happened to him when he was a young man. You kind of learn about some pretty intense relationship drama. It kind of leads up and builds up to the events that caused him to return back to the Nile, back to Sudan. Essentially, he confesses something pretty big to our narrator. And then Mustafa completely disappears, and he leaves our narrator in charge of his wife. And that's not a spoiler, I believe it's on the back actually in the synopsis. And it kind of leaves our narrator reckoning with this new life change. He's just back. Now there's even more change happening with this man who he didn't even know previously, just like a couple weeks ago. This was selected at one point in time. This is part of the reason why I picked it up for this challenge. Like in the early 2000s, it was chosen by a panel of Arab writers as the most important Arab novel of the 20th century. A lot of the popular novels at the time, which I think this came out in 1966, so it is an older novel. The novels that were really popular at the height of like colonialism were about like a white man. I think it uses Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad as an example, like a white man traveling to like a strange foreign land. And the thing that was unique about this book is that it does the opposite. So you have an Arab person traveling to like Europe or somewhere like that. This was certainly not the only book at the time to do that. There were a lot of people from other different countries doing that as well. In fact, I think I even have one on my shelf that does that exact thing. And this author is even referenced in the intro in this book, is Ngugi's Devil on the Cross. Again, I hope that I'm saying these people's names right. This is another one where it's sort of somebody who lived through colonialism writing back to the empire that colonized their country. As with a lot of international work, there's of course things that are just inevitably going to go over my head, things I'm going to miss because I'm not super familiar with Sudanese culture and politics and, you know, the whole system. But his prose kept me really intrigued. It was 3 stars for me. Then we had something that was much more lighthearted, but this was only a 2-star read for me. I almost DNF'd this. It just wasn't quite what I thought it was gonna be, and that is We Play Ourselves by Jen Silverman. I've had this on my shelf for a while now because it is pitched to be a like all-girl fight club. And if you know me, if you've been following my channel for a while, one of my most popular, like most watched videos on my channel is my Chuck Palahniuk video, where I read all the Chuck Palahniuk books and then gave like a very brief little summary / review of them. And the first book that I mentioned, because I read them all in publication order, was Fight Club. I think it's his first and his best. And so I was super pumped to read this with that description. Are they gonna make, like they're making their own Fight Club film? It's like a documentary, but it's like feminist. So I was really excited. I was like, oh, we're gonna get, you know, like tough girls fighting each other, but then there's gonna be this like commentary about it, I assumed. Basically, our main character, Cass, has transplanted herself from New York, like the New York theater scene, to LA. She's hoping nobody remembers like some weird things that happened between her and like another really popular playwright at the time, who she was basically just like really super jealous of. So she's hoping that nobody remembers that blunder, which the thing that she does is so like not a big deal. She just kind of like gets in this girl's space a little bit. And the way that it's described at the beginning of the book, you're like, did she kill someone? Like what's happened? Like, you know, because she's like trying to escape and there's this big thing that happened. No, it's like so not a big deal. That was one of my first problems that I had with it. And then when we actually get there in LA and she meets the director and the girls themselves, there's not really a lot that's like, we don't really get a lot of scenes with them. Like I feel like the whole Fight Club thing almost feels kind of like a side quest subplot situation, because there's so much in here about just unnecessary crap about like the roommate who Cass moves in with. He has a boyfriend and there's like drama with them, and there is so much about the 2 boys and their relationship drama. For some reason, like why they're side characters. They don't have anything to do with the Fight Club situation. They're not, I don't know why that was in there. There was so much, I felt like there was so much of that. I was like, are we gonna get back to the story at some point in time, or are we just gonna like get the inner workings of these 2 men and their drama between each other? Like I don't know, I didn't get that part. So that was like the second issue that I had. What else? Oh, the other big thing that I didn't love was just Cass she's so obsessed with throwing herself a pity party about not being a super huge successful playwright in New York. She was annoying. I don't love an annoying main character because we're inside their head constantly, so it can be really infuriating to have to like be inside their head all the time. Anyway, like I said, 2 stars. You can't pitch it like a gender swapped Fight Club and then not give me any Fight Club. Don't do that to me. Next up was the last audiobook that I read, the 3rd audiobook of the month, and that was The Road by Cormac McCarthy. This one has been on my TBR for longer than I could tell you, and this was the 5-star of the month. And I'm kind of not surprised because I've just heard such good things about it for so long. This is essentially following a man and his son. They're literally just referred to as the man and the boy, and they're surviving in sort of a post-apocalyptic world, a post-apocalyptic America. There's been some sort of nuclear event. Everything is ash. They're just trying to literally survive day to day, hour by hour. There are blood cults in this book. They're not super explored. It's very much just like you get little kind of dashes of them throughout. They're essentially cannibals, so that's kind of like the main thing that the man and the boy are trying to outrun the whole time. They are not just trying to survive and find food and water, but they're also trying to not get eaten alive by other humans. The main thing about this that I really loved, even though literally like 90% of it is just them walking to the next place, was McCarthy really has some lines that sparkle and twinkle and just shine so bright among, you know, what is essentially like a slushy, ashy environment. And so it just makes, like, when the man is having some sort of realization about something or flashing back to a memory, the way that it's described in McCarthy's prose is just, it's so good. I do want to read you one of those quotes just to give you a little taste. He'd had this feeling before, beyond the numbness and dull despair, the world shrinking down about a raw core of parsable entities. The names of things, slowly following those things into oblivion. Finally, the names of things one believed to be true, more fragile than he would have thought. The sacred idiom shorn of its reverence, and so of its reality, drawing down like something trying to preserve heat, in time to wink out forever. He's basically talking about how he's losing language, like he's literally losing words. He's forgetting what things were called. Like a certain bird will fly by and he'll try to remember like what the bird was called, but the word is just gone because he's not really communicating. I mean, he talks back and forth to the boy, but it's like very spare in terms of dialogue because they're just kind of talking about whatever's happening in the moment. It has a really beautiful but heartrending ending. I don't cry very often. Like, I don't even know that I could name a book that I've cried at. And I didn't fully like sob or shed tears, but like I had a frog in my throat. I was literally listening to it on the way to work too, so I was like, oh my god, let's not cry, and then walk into work and it seemed like I'm, you know, having some meltdown or something because I listened to the audiobook. It really is just one of those books that kind of cuts you to the core. I find it's quite rare where it really makes you reflect on your own life, like by taking us into the lives of these two humans and seeing how they interact with each other and how they're interacting with this new world. It kind of makes you reflect on if you would be able to survive, and it just makes you reflect on your own life. So for all of those reasons, it was a 5-star read for me. All right, we are down to our 2 final books. So we have a Jenny Hval. This is Girls Against God. I read Paradise Rot, which is around here somewhere, a couple months ago, something like that. It was in one of my wrap-ups, and I loved it a lot. It was like an actual normal proper novel. It was almost maybe a novella. It was quite short, kind of a quiet horror novel is how it was described. And this one is described similarly, but this is not really a novel. There was not a lot of plot happening in this. Essentially, Hval, and I hope I'm saying her name right, I'm just pronouncing it phonetically. She's a Norwegian author, so this is a translated work, but she really puts forward a lot of ideas about music, 'cause she's a musician, art, just womanhood, queerness, capitalism, and like freedom of speech and government, and so many ideas, like just so many ideas and topics are brought up. But I feel like this should have been an essay collection. She would be really, really excellent, I think, at an essay collection. This is just packaged oddly to me. It's not really, I don't know, it just didn't really feel like a novel because the author's ruminations about life and all those different topics that I just mentioned are at the forefront, not the actual plot of our characters. We're basically following, we have a main character, but then we have 3 women who we're following, and they're kind of like in this little coven and they do little spells. Witchcraft is another topic that's brought up a lot in this. I don't know, I just felt like because it was so much of like the narrator just commenting on all of these different topics, it could have been an essay collection instead of a novel. I'm not really sure why it was packaged in novel form. It has a lot of really interesting points, but I'm just confused as to why it was marketed as a novel, you know? I gave it 3 stars. All right, we have made it to the DNF, the final book of the month. I literally made it, out of 338 pages, I made it to page 168. So I literally made it like almost exactly halfway through. Frustrated with myself, honestly. Maybe I should have just pushed through, but I couldn't do it. It's just not moving fast enough. It was a pacing thing. It was very meandering. We would go over here and talk about this for a while, and then we'd be over here, and I'm like, are we gonna get to the aliens? When are we getting to the aliens? That's what I wanna know. So this is a first contact novel. It takes place in 2083. It's A Half-Built Garden by Ruth Anna Emrys. She's kind of pitched as a like literary descendant of Ursula K. Le Guin, and I definitely can pick up on that. Ursula K. Le Guin wrote Left Hand of Darkness. That's kind of the main thing that she's most famous for, I think, which I did read in college and thought it was really interesting. And she does a lot with gender swapping, gender flipping, all sorts of really interesting things with like gender fluidity that was like ahead of its time. And I think Emrys is trying to copy that a little bit, but it's just not done as well, and it's overwhelming, and it's distracting, and it's just not necessary. So essentially, like I said, it's a first contact novel. Our main character, Judy, happens to be the one on call, and she's like not a surveyor, but she works for this. The way the world is set is that we've split into like 3 different factions, and she works for what's called a watershed network, and it's basically kind of like an EPA sort of organization that is trying to bring the world back from climate change. So you have the watershed networks, you still have like the corporations who think that they're in charge of everything, but really they're the ones who've like ruined everything. And then you have nation states. And all these 3 people obviously have a very different opinion about what should be done, about how we should interact with these aliens, which are described very interestingly. They're like pangolin / pillbug type aliens. That's how they're sort of described. But the thing with the genders is I just found it like I kept wondering what the point was, because it's not the aliens who have like this plethora of genders. It's the humans. They go to like I don't even know, like a dinner party or something at one point in time to try to, I guess, convince the other people that they should be able to interact with aliens in this like certain particular way. There's like a whole diatribe about all the different human genders, and there has to be like 10 or 15 of them. It's just a lot. It's very excessive. I just was like, can we just get back to the aliens? Like why aren't we focused more on that? I feel like Judy, her main thing is that she's kind of like underqualified to speak with the aliens, but she happened to be the one on duty, so they kind of only want to speak with her. There's so many like sentences in here of where she's like afraid she's gonna misgender the aliens, and I don't know, I just feel like it's in 10 years we're gonna look back at this and it's gonna feel like a book of its time for sure. It came out in 2022, and the issues that were happening in the world, in politics and culture, it's just gonna date this book really badly. Kind of like when you read science fiction from like the 50s or something, and you can tell that like the author couldn't really see past like the technology of the time or the issues of the time. Women are written about in a really objectified way in science fiction in the 50s because that's just what was happening in culture at the time. So it's kind of like that. The other reason why I DNF'd it, the main reason, was there is so much internal dialogue of Judy second guessing her interactions with other humans, with the aliens. There's so much conjecture and philosophizing and conceptualizing what could happen, and I'm like, just like, let's have something happen though. Like let's move forward with something. And even halfway through, like nothing had really happened yet. No decisions had been made. Like I said, there was like a dinner party with the aliens, and that was kind of about it. So I was just waiting for something to happen, and I just got to the point where I didn't want to pick it up anymore. Now the writing is exceptional, I will say. It's kind of excessive. Like I said, it's too much internal dialogue, way too much. But the world that she has imagined is very inspiring, and it's definitely more lighthearted than a lot of the like dystopian novels and things that we see. I loved the way that she envisions technology, in the future. It definitely feels kind of solar punk vibes, which I love. Something like A Psalm for the Wild Built, where it's very much like we've learned to heal the earth again. So yeah, no doubt that she's a phenomenal writer. Maybe I would just like a different book from her. For a science fiction novel, typically they're like it's a plot heavy genre, so I really couldn't bring myself to continue. So no stars for this because I didn't finish it. I'm not gonna rate it since I didn't finish it. I did skip to the end and read the epilogue. And again, it's a very light-hearted ending compared to a lot of like dystopic type science fiction, so you might love this. It is well written, maybe give it a chance, but I just didn't feel like enough was happening for me to continue. And that is it. That is everything that I read for the month of May. You guys let me know, again, what did you read? What did you love? What did you give a 5-star? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.